clear Mahlobo doesn't want to do what Jacob Zuma's known for.
Thanks, Ayanda. So, minor mistakes like forgetting to update your address details on your tax returns could land you behind bars. But that's according to new adjustments to the country's tax laws, which came into effect this year. So, our business reporter, Annalisa Tuso, just took a closer look.
Funds collected by SARS is the backbone of our budget. If the Revenue Service loses money, there's less to spend on essentials like adequate service delivery or paying off our massive debt bill. To avoid leakages, SARS has tightened its laws, making it more difficult for tax dodgers.
The fact that you haven't complied can now be tested against an objective standard, and you can be held criminally liable for failing to comply with that objective standard.
Previously, SARS could fine you or lay a criminal complaint against you for deliberate tax avoidance. With the new laws, SARS won't have to prove that you willfully broke the law. And there's a long list of things that could land you in hot water.
Failing to file a return when it was due, failing to register for tax if you have an obligation to do so, failing to update your details with SARS.
So what do you do when you find yourself in trouble with SARS?
When they do so, you file the necessary returns, pay the outstanding taxes, and then gain immunity from criminal prosecution and even the imposition of, significant civil penalties as well.
The expert urges people to do their taxes diligently or hire an expert. Failure to do so could see you fined 200,000 rand or jailed for 2 years. Annalisa Tuso, Cape Town.
Yeah, so let's get more details on this. We talk now to Peter Faber, who is a senior executive for tax at the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. Peter, good afternoon to you. I mean, we hear these sort of stories, right? And honestly, a lot of South Africans get quite worried because along the way here, we're hearing that something as simple as the wrong address on your tax documentation could land you behind bars for 2 years. Is this not slightly dramatic and over the top?
Well, I think that's the concern. So I think first we need to acknowledge there is a problem. So the Commissioner has a problem. Commissioner of SARS has a problem regarding outstanding returns, and it has a problem regarding people paying their taxes. What we don't need is essentially laws on the book that criminalize administrative non-compliance, especially when that law, according to SARS, when they present it to Parliament, will not necessarily be the first point of call, so to speak. Yet that's not what the law says. And I think that is more the greater concern, is that if you have something that criminalizes an action, who is going to determine who receives a warning from SARS or a civil penalty or goes to jail for exactly the same conduct? And I think that is more the concern, that from a policy perspective, this might not actually solve SARS's problem regarding compliance, but actually create disparity in its enforcement.
Yeah, and one of the things I was going to talk about was just the ease of being able to do things as a small business or an individual in South Africa on SARS's platforms and within SARS's infrastructure as well, whether they have a well-oiled machine themselves to make sure that all the paperwork is in there and up to date.
Well, that's correct. So if I'm going to be criminally held liable for administrative compliance, for non-compliance, people feel that it's unfair if the same does not apply on the other side. And I think that's the other to and fro when it comes to administrative non-compliance, is that the system must be pretty flawless in that respect before we start criminalizing things.
Yeah, it's not just to the taxpayer themselves now that have to be a lot more careful. You certainly have a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot if you are a tax consultant especially.
Correct. So the law itself in South Africa, our tax profession is regulated, and we've seen quite a lot of further extensions of the obligations and liabilities of tax practitioners. And in fact, in recent months, we've actually seen tax practitioners being asked to make warning statements in respect of the tax affairs of their clients. Essentially, this was prior to criminal prosecutions, and their tax practitioners now being summoned to also tell their story in resolve their involvement into their clients' affairs. So there is a push in respect of the profession itself to also make sure that they are not necessarily aiding and abetting their clients in all sorts of nefarious transactions.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be, very interesting to see what this looks like when we get around to filing season. But let's leave it there. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Peter Faber,
Thank you very much for having
Senior
me.
Executive for Tax at the South African